This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Kyle Hausmann-Stokes about My Dead Friend Zoe. How are you, Kyle?
I'm great, Abe. How are you, man?
Good, good. I had the chance to see this film when it premiered at South by Southwest, so it's nice to be able to revisit now. And also, I know that the film isn't coming out until February, so it's a nice long gap, I think, where I'm sure you've had a lot of opportunity to reflect a lot on the film.
I have, and I'm glad that you saw it at South by that, and I'm glad that it stuck with you. But yes, we're excited. We're excited for February. It's had the most amazing festival run. We've won these audience awards and grand jury, and it's actually, I think it was meant to be. So, yeah.
I'd love to hear about the inspiration for the film because I know that it's described as autobiographical, but obviously you are not what it's not exactly
Yes,
autobiographical. Can you
yes.
tell me about the influences?
Yes, I am not Sonequa Martin Green, even though I wish that I were. Yeah, the film is inspired by my true story, by my kind of post-Iraq experience. What it was like for me coming home, some of the stuff I was going through, not being able to talk about it at first, being convinced that I needed to by a Vietnam veteran, played by Morgan Freeman in the film, and then also this very unique relationship interaction that I had with my grandfather, who was a Vietnam veteran, and just kind of the differences. We veterans are not a monolith, just like no one is, and so it's kind of interesting to see those way those things play out. But it's a comedy. It's a dark comedy. It's a drama. I mean, we in the military, we that's how we get through stuff. And so I'm just excited that as a veteran, I feel like so rarely do we get to sit in the director's chair and tell our own story. But also, I think it's true what they say, make the kind of film that you want to see. And I've just never had the chance to see a film about us, about my people, like this. So I figured might as well make it. So yeah.
Well, there's so many things I want to talk about, and while it feels wrong to not start talking about Zoe, I actually want to start with the grandfather character because you mentioned that, and what's still sticking with me is talking about flying back to SFO and having to change in the bathroom and still
Yeah.
getting spat on because he has the you can't hide the camouflage bag that he's carrying. It just strikes me as such an interesting thing that sort of like older generation be like, well, these are today's problems and they're nothing like what we went through. But I think this film shows that obviously it's different, but it's still quite can be quite serious.
You've got a great memory. You should be a film critic. So thank you for remembering that. That those words are verbatim what my grandfather. That was his story. One of the few stories he would talk about coming to SFO, had to change out of his uniform in the public bathroom, but still being identified. And I actually remember that day that we were filming, and I had written a little bit more dialogue, and I was scratching it out. And Ed Harris was so kind. He's like, "No, I want to say this stuff," So he believed in me even when I didn't. But it's so true. I mean, when I came back from Iraq, there were crowds at the airport. They shot fire hoses over the jetway. I had little kids that asked me for my autograph. um Americans say thank you for your service all the time. It's so nice, it's so welcome. That wasn't the case for my grandfather, for that entire generation. And you see it when us young bucks are coming back and being celebrated, and then here's the older folks that it's like the history has almost forgotten a little bit. So I know that sounds maybe sad and heavy, and it is, but again, I just keep coming back to, like, there's so much good friction between the protagonist and the grandfather character, these two veterans, bickering about their wars, and but then learning from each other.
Well, I do think we've gotten to a point in a lot of American politics where people are against wars in general or the war, but I still don't think that's translating to being against soldiers the same way
Good.
that it did in that era. Is that right, or have
I
we shifted since?
I I hope so. I mean, I think no, I would say 100% we have made. I mean, there's always room for improvement, of course, but from the Vietnam era, and a lot of people don't know, when those men and women came home, they were not necessarily accepted by the World War II veterans. That was the greatest generation. That was the good war. That was good guys versus bad guys. And then Vietnam was different, and most of those soldiers didn't have a choice in going over there. Um, so because of the sacrifice and because of the pain that the country went through together collectively, I mean, you can kind of understand both sides of it. um, we almost had to do that to grow. And I think my fellow Iraq and Afghanistan, and just any, we call them global war and terrorism generation, it's a mouthful, veterans, we are the beneficiaries of, I think, the Vietnam vets, enduring that, but then also the country learning, like you said, to separate the soldier from the war.
What kind of responses have you gotten from any Vietnam vets? Have they had a chance to see this, and are they vocal about their thoughts?
I get emotional thinking about it. The high level is amazing responses. We've played this film all over the country now, all over the world. I was just in the Netherlands. We'll be going to France soon. Um, One small anecdote I will tell you: uh, somebody who's actually connected to the film, their father is a Vietnam veteran. Never talked about it. That's like the line in the family. Dad doesn't talk about this. And he saw the film at South by with you, and he was at our after party, and he came up to his son, who's an adult man, and he said, I think I'm ready to talk about it," and then just walked away. And that right there, I think is kind of everything.
Well, I want to get back to how the film is structured, because I think having Zoe as a character that the audience and Merritt get to see and no one
Yes,
else is a very cinematic device. Did you have
it
any
is.
doubts about how you wanted to implement that, and just watching the process if that was the right choice for this?
Have you seen American Werewolf in London, the original?
I don't think so,
Oh
no.
man, you have to see it.
All right.
So that was a big inspiration for me. American Werewolf in London. I think it's maybe from the 70s or 80s. I saw that as a young kid, and there's two buddies. They're backpacking throughout Europe, England, and one is killed by this werewolf, and then he comes back as this maimed version of himself. He's dead. No one can see him, but he's funny. And we've seen the ghost story over and over and again, TV, film, whatever it is, but not necessarily, other than maybe Drop Dead Fred, have we seen a version of it where it's kind of it's a pesky ghost, but it's also an enjoyable one, entertaining one too. And again, I just really wanted to. There is such a important message in the film. I do have so much that I'm trying to say with the film, but I think you really do need sugar with the medicine. And so that was that huge part of the device. It's exactly what Zoe was, is a device to take some of the gravity out occasionally and add some levity. And Natalie Morales is just she's a comedic mastermind, and I give so much credit to her. I mean, my co-writer AJ and I, we had stuff that we had written, a lot of things, but Natalie just improvised so many things, and she really got it. So I'm so grateful to her.
I think the casting all across the board is great. I spoke to Utkarsh recently and mentioned that he seems to only get roles where he's
I
around
know.
people who can
Yeah,
see dead
yeah,
people who he can't see.
yeah. What's with that? Yeah.
But I also like that relationship because it feels like in a lot of other films you might have a conflict that's based on other things, and here it's just he wants to understand, he wants to be present, but it's hard to be able to relate, even though he's in a space where he works with a different kind of issue people are getting through.
I'm glad you brought up Utkarsh. His character in the film, it's actually always such a breath of fresh air for me when I watch the film with an audience, because it starts off and it's like, oh my gosh, war, military, people are still trying to get their bearings. What kind of film am I watching here? They're not quite sure if they can laugh or not. And then they do. But then when Utkarsh comes on the scene, he's so funny. He's so funny, so smart. His timing is amazing. And he plays a character that was equally important to me, which is a civilian, a non-veteran, because this movie is littered with veterans, real ones too. 90% of the cast, real veterans, including Morgan Freeman. Um, but Utkarsh represents for me civilians that I had met in my journey, my that had also been through something, but it wasn't combat related. And kind of for me, it was yeah, a bit of a lesson to learn from them as well, because his character is kind of post growth, and I think a lot of what I'm trying to say with this film is everybody knows about PTSD, and it's so easy to classify everything as PTSD. One thing that a lot of us veterans have that I wish more folks would talk about is post traumatic growth. You've been through something, and you're stronger for it. Scar tissue is stronger than skin. So, Utkarsh, for Merritt, the protagonist, he's that example of you can go through some stuff, but you can make it out on the other side, and actually maybe be better for it.
I think maybe aside from its genre, this doesn't really strike me as a South by Southwest kind of movie. I think it's definitely a good movie, but it's not, I think if I had heard of it, I would have guessed maybe it would have started at a different festival. How do you feel it works with the audiences there, and did that surprise you at all?
I mean, I love South by so much. I've been there just as a as a fan, as a film goer, as a filmmaker. I don't know. I see what you're saying, but I actually kind of think it was a great South by film because it's definitely artful and we're winning the critical acclaim, but it's also a little punk rock and like I said, it's funny and we've got Rihanna Umbrella to kick off the music. We've got Labyrinth's, power couple. Like it's what I love about South by is that it has would they get mad at me for saying more commercial, a little bit like Toronto. And I don't know, man. We played opening weekend, 1,200 people sold out that theater, and then it won the audience award at South by. So yeah, I'm gonna take stock. I think it was a very South by film.
Well, I don't want to focus on any negativity, but have you received any negative reactions to the film, and how do you
No,
engage with those kind of people?
that's a great question. Letterboxd, which I've become such a fan of, and we already have, over a few hundred responses on there. One got me that just made me laugh out loud. It said, "This movie will crush it on TNT," which I thought was so funny. Um, you know, I know this, of course, I think there are some people, let's see, when we played it overseas, for example, in the Leiden International Film Festival, which is just outside Amsterdam. So I had some reviews and some folks that, feel like this is American exceptionalism. This is I even saw somebody post about they're a European person. They said, here we go, another film that's pitying these American veterans when that country, what are they doing? They shouldn't be mucking with the world anyway. And it almost cuts opposite to what we were talking about earlier, where you kind of separate the two. But I get it. I really get that. And if anything, um, I met an Iraqi woman in Amsterdam also, which really made my throat catch because I haven't met that many Iraqis after I was there, and I still have a lot of guilt and just a lot. I mean, not that I or we did anything badly, just being there, it sucks. It was really hard. But anyway, she came up to me after, very quiet, and she said that she had a very specific idea about American soldiers. And she came to the film because she was a little curious, and then she came out. She's like, I have a completely different perspective, and just like you said, yeah, just separating out the person from the job, and we don't get to choose the conflicts. You just get to choose that you want to be of service, and then you hope for the best.
You think this is a film that all veterans should see, or that some people might feel like this is just it will be too real for them?
I I do think all veterans should see it. I don't think all veterans should necessarily see every war film action packed. I got to go to the premiere of Civil War, Alex Garland's film at South by. I was so blown away. I told him after, but yeah, I had a scene in there that really got to me, really got to me. It was so viscerally close, and it can be triggering for some. I'm happy to report that my dead friend Zoe has got zero combat. There's not even a single gunshot in the film. So I think there are moments you'll be on the edge of your seat, but it is not related to that. And yeah, I think one thing that wish more Americans would give us veterans credit for is like, we don't need or want your sympathy. If anything, give us a challenge. We're very capable and useful. So, um, to veterans that maybe don't want to talk about it, don't want to talk about their service or something that happened, I would say see this movie and see how other folks are talking about it and like make it a challenge to do it yourself because you're not doing anybody favors, yourself or maybe your battle buddies that you lost by harboring that stuff. So I think it's almost like the next mission.
I like that. Well, obviously February is pretty far away, not so far away, I guess, but what is next for you? Or you have another feature that you're planning?
I have a few. I'm kind of in that fairy tale moment. I really am in this pinch me thing of yeah, trying to decide what's next. My reps have been sending me some scripts. I have some things I guess I can talk about a little bit. I've written another script. My dead friend's always about two women. This next film is about men, and it's called, well, it's a movie about male friendship. It's a comedy about male friendship that also has a lot of pathos to it. So I don't know. It's a little bit, I Love You Man meets Fight Club, about a guy who starts a men's group. And there's a sports movie that I'm kind of a part of, and yeah, so some things coming up. But I'm always going to be a veteran storyteller. There are so few of us, other than Oliver Stone and Rod Lurie. We just don't get this opportunity. So I don't take that lightly. I've worked my ass off to get here. So I'm excited to make all kinds of stories, but definitely more military and veteran stories for me, but from that humanist perspective.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to unpack this with me, and best of luck with the release.
Thank you, Abe. I appreciate you, man.